What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday night, and it is a little past 8, but that's okay. So I'm here with my good friend, John Anthony, Master Yoda, and he hasn't been here since April. So, John, how have things been going? I know there was some, I don't want to say concern because everything's worked out, but there was some challenges, and you managed to use the tools and your resources and get through them, right?
Yeah, my one daughter had some health issues, but we got through it. She's back to normal. And then swim team, for the last 2 months for all three of them, and it's been a lot of fun, but just busy, and, no time to do things.
The summer's just flying by, isn't it?
Yes, it feels like it.
Yeah, it's like you try to make all these plans and you have all these ambitions. There are all these dreams and ambitions. You're gonna make it to the water park, the beach. You're gonna see family, but you still got to work and you still got to make time to actually take off and all that fun stuff. So it's a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Excuse me real quick. So, John, we didn't really have too much time to prep, but that's fine because we always have good conversations one way or the other. So originally my one plan was that we would discuss that I'm a teen dad, or I was a teen dad, and my teenager is dating, and lots of concern could be there, right? Lots of fear, right? All the things we talk about, and the toxic thoughts and all that stuff. But I was like, I'm just so wrapped up in what's going on in the world in general with mental health awareness, and then I'm really interested, upset, annoyed even. And I know that there's aren't feelings from the book, but about everything that's going on with Simone Biles right now. And to summarize it, I'm sure you've seen what's happened in the Olympics, that she stepped away and cited mental health issues or mental health concerns.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah. So and then one thing I'm always talking about is the stigma that's attached to mental health, right? We like to say mental health awareness and the stigma, things like that. And, I hope people sincerely mean it when they mention it or discuss it. I know that I do. I mention it a lot. I have so many thoughts on ending the stigma, and is it actually possible? Because, so many people judge others, and how can people feel open about how they're actually feeling in regards to their mental health state if they're still not willing to talk about it? And I think that's kind of a double-edged sword, because that person may not be ready to talk about it themselves, and other people may not listen or want to understand or listen where that person's coming from when they actually start talking about how they feel. So Simone Biles steps away, citing mental health issues. And to quote Richard, who's not here, a lot of people are villainizing her, right? A lot of people are kind of like, well, she's an Olympic athlete. She let her country down. She let her team down, and the list goes on. A lot of people like to cut reels from, the internet, press conferences, things like that, and show her that, she's happy-go-lucky in the press conference with her team. And, my quick little comment to that is, right, and I put it on my social media page, and I'm kind of conflicted if I should have done that or not, but it was Robin Williams and A Big Smile, and it just goes to really drive home that point, and you don't really know what anybody is going through. So before I keep rambling on, you are the guest host, and to kick off the discussion, but how are you feeling about Simone Biles and where she's at, and your thoughts on mental health in general, the whole awareness and stigma?
Well, let me just say about people's responses. It's real easy for people to sit in the stands and condemn, and boo anything, whether it's football, baseball. You have people who aren't able to perform at the level of the athlete that they're watching, and they're jumping to conclusions. They're finding fault, getting out the magnifying glass and, looking, for the cracks, and then finding them and, wanting to point them out and exacerbate them, make them worse. And
Sure.
so it's real easy to, put down somebody else's life, when they're sitting there on their couch, and they don't work anywhere near as hard to do the things that she's done. She is a very strong competitor, and she has been doing this for years. And I don't have any doubt in my mind that if she felt like she could do it, perform, at her full capacity, she would be out there doing it. The Olympics come every 4 years. This one waited 5 years, and the next one's going to be at least 3 years away. And I am sure if she could, she would be there. And it's unfortunate that people find fault and put things down like they own her. She's, our country. She is representing our country, and we, can choose to be grateful that someone as talented as she is performing and bringing glory to our country, or we can condemn and put it down. It's unfortunate. Then the mental health part, I haven't talked to her. I haven't heard hardly anything
Mm-hmm.
about why, but I'm willing to bet that the negative fantasies, the thoughts that she's having about whether she can perform or whatever, could be playing a key role, and, I haven't talked to her. I don't know. It's just my, fantasy about what might be going on. But I think it's unfortunate that, we jump on people like, apparently some people are doing. I haven't been on the social media to hear those complaints, but, I, trust that you've seen them, and, and that Richard has seen them, and, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, no, it is very unfortunate, and I agree with everything you said. And I think if everybody listened to our podcast, they would see Ryan always agrees with everything John says. Well, I do. And here's something that sticks out in my head, uh, among everything else, like you said, the amount and I want to touch on what you said about being an Olympic athlete, right? So like you said, everybody's giving all their opinions, and it's like, respectfully, unless you've been to the Olympics or close to it and didn't make it, you have no idea what it takes to be an Olympic athlete. Mentally, physically, emotionally, you're not going out socializing with your friends as much as you may like because you got to focus, right? You are
Mm-hmm.
missing tons of events. You're missing tons of things that you would like to do. Maybe you want to just take a month off, go on a vacation here or there, but that you have to have that mentality that you're super laser focused. So again, that's a lot of people have never even been close to being a superior athlete in any form. And that's not jabbing, at people who haven't made it. That's fine. If that's not your thing, that's fine. But a lot of people that haven't, which is the majority of us, whether we're speaking positively or negatively about the situation, we don't know what it's like. I have no idea. I barely made it through high school sports. You know what I mean? So I have no idea what it takes to be that kind of competitor. But one thing I think people are forgetting or just don't know, which is fine. And if you don't know, you don't know. This recently happened, and it pertains to her. Tevin, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Tevin Biles Thomas, Simone Biles' brother, had murder charges dropped. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, and this was recently. And there's video footage about what took place in the courtroom. He was acquitted, and the mother of the victims lashed out at the court system, lashed out at everything that happened, right? A mother lost in her feelings, her emotions, her children have been taken from her. She's upset, okay? People might think, well, Simone's got to stay focused, right? She's got to keep her eye on the prize. She's got the Olympics coming up. If my sister was in this situation, whether she went to jail, guilty, did it, didn't do it, I don't know where my head would be at, period. So for people to just be like, oh, she's perfectly fine, like, no, she's human. Okay, this is a traumatic event for her family. Regardless, they probably will never outlive it. She is probably feels like she's tied into it. Well, I mean, indirectly, but there's a lot going on there, right? So what do you think about that as far as what's happening and affecting her and things like that?
Well, I wasn't aware of that particular story,
I don't think a lot of
and
people were. Yeah,
I definitely can see how that would contribute to be a distraction for her, emotionally. That you know, and it's just it's unfortunate, and some people just as I do all the work that I do, um, Ryan,
yeah,
people don't know how to deal with their hurt feelings, their sadnesses, their disappointments, their shames, their embarrassments, their concerns, their fears. And, to remind everybody, when we talk about concerns and fears, it's concerns and fears of losing something that I have, or the concern or fear of not getting something I desire. And people don't know how to deal with that, and it starts off when we're little children. We try to cope with, when we get disappointed, when things happen, when we get embarrassed, when things happen that scare us. And we come up with these coping styles as a child. And then we keep using it well into our adult years, even though our brain is much more developed now that we're an adult, and it can come up with even, healthier responses to all of those emotions. But we don't realize that. And so we keep doing what we came up with as a child. And, that's what makes people violent, whether it's verbally, emotionally, or physically, because they don't know what to do with their hurts and their disappointments and their fears. The people that are vilifying Simone Biles are hurt. They had positive fantasies that the U.S. was going to win this and do that. And now all of a sudden it looks like it might not happen. And so that when you turn a positive fantasy into an expectation and the expectation doesn't get met, it's devastating. And so it's, I see some people someone wrote,
yeah. Well, so and that's one thing that I was going to say when you wrapped up what you were saying was that Monica said, just FYI, they did not grow up together. Simone was adopted by her grandparents. But I think what I would say to that respectfully is that I can't imagine that it's not lingering in her thoughts. You know what I mean? I can't imagine that it's not affecting her in some way, right? Because first we have the trauma of being separated from your brother. Okay, they had that picture together, and I don't know how much they actually saw each other. I wasn't there, but there's obviously some trauma in the family that, or from what I can see, that they were separated and weren't together. And now it's kind of like, well, maybe I didn't really know my brother the way I wanted to. Maybe there are reasons that you or I and everybody else doesn't know. And then he supposedly commits murder and is acquitted. And I can't imagine that it's not lingering in her head, subconsciously or whatever the case may be. What do you think?
I think that you're right on. I agree with you, 100% about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that you and I always talk about,
Separation from,
Kensmith.
just because you don't grow up with somebody doesn't mean that, you're not attached to them or bonded, and, it's just, it's, we don't know what's in her head. And that's the thing about mental illness, um, is you can't see it like an injury, with, and I really have a problem calling it illness. It's a challenge that she's going
Right.
through mentally. And, we can't see it like a broken leg, or when a person's limping. And, so because you can't see it, it's, real easy for people to doubt it.
Right. It's like, they might be thinking, well, she didn't know him really, or they didn't live together. She lived with their grandparents, disrespect to my wife. But, I always think to myself that that's one thing that always goes unchecked is that people, even people who are living through it, living their day to day lives, right? And I think you and I have talked about this before, and I know my mom and I did, is that you're going to Starbucks, you get your coffee, right? you're good. You just got a promotion. Everything's good. Your family's good. Kids are doing great in school. You and the husband are happy. You have a date night lined up, right? I'm good. I'm great. I go into Starbucks and I see a mom yelling at her kid, and suddenly I'm shell shocked. Something I wasn't thinking about is triggered. You know what I mean? And that's one thing. I think that's the example I'm going to use. I know that's the example I'm going to use as far as people not realizing that there might be something else going on that they haven't dealt with that they need to deal with perhaps and sooner than later.
Right. And I I I prefer to see it rather than triggered. I see it as an emotional wound that's getting
Okay.
bumped into,
Right.
because trigger is like somebody else is pulling the trigger. The emotional wound is just letting us know that it's our wound and we have to heal it if we want to be able to not react to those things when they happen.
Right.
And if we don't work on healing emotional wounds, then we're going to just have an accumulation of wounds that we're walking around with. And there's going to be all kinds of things that are going to bump into those wounds and other emotional wounds that we have and haven't healed. And then it's painful. And then a lot of times we react in pain, hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right, but that's what we do. And you can see it with children. When some children are hurt, they want to hurt back right away.
Right.
And it's what to do with our hurt. That's something that we don't do a very good job of in our society, because we think that all we have to do is punish those behaviors, and that is going to cause them to cease and desist. And it doesn't, because people, it's like telling somebody that has to sneeze, that they can't do that. So what else can they do when they have to sneeze? And so some of these emotional wounds, when they're getting bumped into, they're painful. And so what do? It doesn't justify that I, vomit emotionally all over somebody else, but it's important that we address our hurts, our emotional hurts. And we don't do a very good job of that in our society, or, really around the world. And at the bottom of all those is fear, the fear of losing something or the fear of not getting something.
Right. And one thing I'd like you to touch on real quick, I've asked you this before for our first time viewers or listeners, and while you explain and reiterate, I'm also going to look something up, but if you could just give people an idea, right? Because you counseled a lot of people, you've helped them through challenges, myself being one of them. But if you could just give people an idea about how sometimes you just cannot start on that day. You got to go back to when they were 2 years old, 6 years old. You really have to start walking through everything. Sometimes you got to start walking through all the rough and start figuring out what went wrong. What would you have to say about that, or in your experience?
Well, certainly that's one way of looking at things. See, in my experience, emotional wounds happen in the past, and then they get bumped into in the present. And what seems to me to be what happens is that if we deal with the wound that is in the present and we heal that, like abandonment, neglect, being abused, emotional wounds along those lines. If we deal with it with the incident in the recent present, or recent past, close to the present, then it helps to heal that wound way back in the past. But sometimes it's more helpful to go back in the past when that wound first occurred, and when we heal it from that dynamic, then it helps us in the present. So you can work on either area. Healing is healing, and when you heal a wound around neglect, it's going to help you with the past, and it's going to help you in the present and your future experiences. That's been my experience.
I always think about when it comes to what we're talking about here, parents, right? Whether we respect them and love them or we had some challenges, that's usually the big one, right? It's like people don't really, it, people are like, oh yeah, yeah, and this person's happy-go-lucky, and then they see you with your mom or dad or sister and brother, and it's like, whoa, like I didn't know like that side of them existed. You also don't know what we went through growing up, whether we had challenges, whether we had issues, whether there was a traumatic experience, something that there's a reason that we interact the way we do. That's my big one always, is that parents, whether they did something and we're still holding on to it or we haven't addressed it, that's the one I always come back to. Family, let's just say family.
Yeah, well, the thing is, children have an expectation of how they want to be treated. Parents have an expectation of how they want to parent and how they want their children to behave. And these don't always line up for everyone. And, I remember, there's a thing called landmark education that I went to many years ago. And they take you through this weekend workshop. And, you go Friday night, all day Saturday and into Sunday. And it was, it was very well done. And it was lots of people, 100 people in the room. And one of the things that they were trying to get across is that if you're a parent, somehow, some way, you are going to do something that is going to screw up your child's life according to the child.
Inevitably.
Yeah, something, because, you didn't let me go to the college that I wanted to go to, or, you wouldn't take me to swim practice when I was little, and, or you wouldn't let me get a phone. There's all kinds of things that we're going to do that our children are going to be devastated by for their limited experience on earth as to what is, to them a catastrophe, because a lot of it is what they are thinking about themselves. See, that when a person has an incident or trauma that happens to them, that incident or trauma is painful emotionally. But what adds to the pain of that trauma is what that person thinks about themselves, given that the trauma occurred. What also adds is what that person thinks about the person they had the trauma with thinks about them. That adds to our pain. And then there's what we think other people think about us because we were involved in that trauma. Those last three things, what the other person who did it thinks about us, what other people think about us, and what I think about me, those are all things that are occurring in our mind, in our head. And we don't see the role that takes on. We think it's all about what happened to us, but it's really our interpretation of what happened. That's what causes our feelings. That's what causes our attitude and our experience. If that were not the case, if the experience determined what we're feeling, then everybody would have felt the same way about, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl. But not
What about
everybody
Simone
felt the
Biles?
same way. Yeah, well, and it's the
Yeah,
same thing
those are
with
the people
Simone
from their
Biles.
couch, right? They didn't get to play the
Yeah,
sport. Maybe they didn't get to do what they want to do. Maybe they're not doing what they want to do in life. And then it's like, so like you said, well, here's Facebook. I'm going to jump right to the comments section. Simone Biles, you're a quitter. You let your country down.
yeah. See, and it's just real easy to judge and condemn, and it's unfortunate. And but the reason I was using the football because it's something that doesn't have the emotional attachment to it that what this might have right now in the midst of the Olympics and what people are wanting and what they're thinking. And so the teams that rooted for Kansas City, people that rooted for Kansas City aren't happy about what happened when Tampa Bay won. and then people like my wife who could care less about any of that, has a completely different feeling about it. So things, it's not what happens, it's what we think about what happens that determines what we're feeling. And that's a responsibility that we all have. And not a lot of people take responsibility for that responsibility. We want to blame other people for why we're feeling what we're feeling. And then some people go so far as to blame them for why I did or didn't do whatever I did or didn't do. And that's how we give our power away to other people, and how we prevent ourselves from being able to create a life that we love, because we're reacting to things, we're not responding.
Yes. Yes. So real quick, I'm going to jump to this real quick. Can you see this? Can you see this photo here?
It's real difficult. I was looking to see how I could, make my screen get
I don't think, like, hold on. Let's see this. Better?
Better, but okay, here we go.
So run through this with me real quick.
That's better. All right.
Run through this with me real quick. And I'm pretty sure this was taken after she resigned from the events. So, and this is what people are talking about. Well, how could somebody who's struggling with mental health look like that, right? How could she be so excited when she's just dropped out of the Olympics and, she's struggling with mental health? And I'm going to keep saying this 1,000 times over the next 24 hours. And I'm sure you know the same thing. Mental health, it doesn't have a look. All right, let's make that very clear. And also, let's say that she is going through some mental health challenges that she needs to overcome. All right. And she says, I'm stepping away, right? How relieving that must be if that is the case, right? I haven't talked to her. She's saying that she's having mental health struggles, right? If I had mental health struggles and I was just like, listen, I can't compete. I'm not going to make it. I need to step away. And I'm going to tell everybody that I'm having mental health issues. That's all I'm going to say. It's none of their business what's going on. If I decide to talk about it later, I'll do so, right? But if you're feeling that way, how relieving, like how much of a relief it must be to be like, all right, well, I feel better. I feel better that I said it. I feel better that I'm doing what I need to do. I feel great, right? What do you think about what's going on? What do you think how she might be feeling right now?
Well, certainly that's one response. A person can be relieved because, the pressure of performing at that kind of a level is no longer hanging over them. It just ties in with what I was saying. It's what we think about the situation. If I can think that way and be relieved, or I can, beat myself up and put myself down and make things even more stressful, because I'm not accepting and understanding what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Go into the locker room and just throw everything around, start stomping my feet.
Well, that's taking that sadness and the disappointment, shame, fear, and turning it to anger, and throwing things around in the locker room is not going to do anything to help my emotional pain be alleviated. It's just not going to do it. That doesn't heal emotional pain. Anger doesn't heal, not even a little bit. And the time that we spend in our anger is time that we are preventing ourselves from having love in our life. Because if you remember from my other talks, I've mentioned to people, how fear always comes before anger, and fear is the absence of love from me to me. And when I can give that love to myself, then I have that, and there's nothing for me to fear. But when I'm not able to give it to myself, then I'm looking for it from others. And even if they wanted to give it to me, it's not going to make my fear go away until I give myself that love. And that's why we break it down to, the Are You a Cat? Respect, understanding, acceptance, caring, appreciation, and trust. 6 ways that I give love to myself and that I give love to someone else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Uh, Sorry, not to jump from one topic to the next, but so my sister and I were talking about this briefly on Facebook when I posted that this is what we were going to be talking about tonight, and I said to her that, in my opinion, mental health, taking care of your mental health, is this weird balance, right? Of doing what you feel you need to do or have to do to feel better, to feel some sort of relief, so long as it's healthy, right? I don't care what anybody says. If this she needed to step away and she feels better, that was a healthy way to do it, right? Well, she let her team down. Well, she let her country down. She's let everybody down. There were people that wanted that spot that could have had it. Well, respectfully, if there were people that could have had it, they would have had it, right? But they couldn't do better than her, respectfully. Okay, no problem. All right, it's the best of the best, but it's this weird balance, right? Sometimes it's like you call out of work because you have to address something, whatever the case may be. Maybe you need a mental health day on the fly. Well, we have an event with 700 people today. It's this weird balance sometimes where I'm sorry, I have to step away and do what I need to do for my mental health today. I apologize. I'll be back tomorrow. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you that it's important that we take responsibility for our own mental health and do things like that if we have to. So the problem is that corporations and employers, they think that they own the people that are working for them. And you have to perform like you are a cog in a machine. And, you you are part of the whole machine. And, if one part isn't working, then it shuts down, you know, the whole machinery, all
Right.
the, you know, and, the association I belong to, we have a pool and a piece on the pump, broke and the pool shut down, and we had to wait for that piece to be sent from New York and probably made and everything. And until you get that piece, we couldn't use the pool. Well, corporations are built like that sometimes. And sometimes families are built like that, where you depend on one person. But, you have to find that balance. And if a person needs that time off, they should have the ability to take that mental health day, like you said. 'Cause maybe something's going on. It's like I did, with my podcast. I stopped podcasting because I had a daughter that needed time and attention from the family because of health issues that she was going through. And like I said, she's healthy now, and that's great. But I just didn't have the time to be able to devote to, these other things that I was doing and work, you know, full time so that I can keep paying my bills.
But you also had to, that's also emotionally too, right? How much would you, because when you're doing a podcast, even like right now, right? I'm drinking this Red Bull. I'm a little bit tired. It's 8 o'clock at 8:30 at night. I've been running around with the kids all day, whatever. I'm drinking a Red Bull because I want to have this energy, right? People expect that from a podcast or going live, right? They want it, they need it. They don't want you and I to be like, "Hey, John," right? You wouldn't be able to give it 110% if you weren't there, right? That's something that people always, well, you want me to come to work and just drag ass, excuse me, or do you want me to do what I need to do, get my head right, get recharged, get refreshed, and I promise you I'll come back and give it everything I've got. Or maybe it's much bigger and I need to step away, talk to human resources, your boss, whoever. Maybe it's a little bit bigger and I need to step away and do what I need to do because you don't want that person to, excuse me for saying it like this, impede on your business, right? Not do what they need to do for themselves and just have, everything just end horribly, right? You have to find that balance.
Yeah. And, you know, you see this with athletes all the time. They had the basketball playoffs and everything. And, some key players got injured and they weren't able to perform, and it meant the team didn't go as far as was expected. And it's unfortunate, because people have their hopes and dreams, and some people bet on it, I guess, and but nobody told them that you had to have those hopes, or that you had to put money on it. That was your choice. And things in life happen. You plan a picnic and it rains. Well, you got to go to plan B. And sometimes, like I said, people don't know how to deal with their hurts.
Yeah. And Monica said for employers, mental health is open ended. Excuse me. For example, if a teacher has surgery, the doctor writes her out for 6 to 8 weeks to heal physically. If she has anxiety that causes migraines, her constant call outs don't have an end point. Well, listen, I mean, there's things that the school or the business can legally do, right? Maybe it just needs to be a one on one conversation. And this is what I always say. If they're calling out constantly, right? And I know that there's a few things you can do legally, with the few things you can ask. What's wrong with the conversation? John, you had the surgery, you've been calling out a lot. What do you need from me? What can we do to make this better, to help you get through this, right? Because I think that employers will be better off in the long run if they maintain some sort of compassion, and then maybe through that discussion. And again, I know that there's legal ramifications, or potentially legal ramifications, but what's wrong with having a one-on-one human conversation, being like, listen, but what's good? How can I help you get through this? What do you need from me? Maybe that person through that conversation might be like, you know what? You're right. This isn't working out. I gotta step away. I gotta go address these things. It's much bigger than just a few call outs here and there. Maybe they don't realize that. And, I don't know what the legal step is, or what could happen. But, I think Monica and I will continuously disagree on this point where, it's like, well, they keep calling out. And then me, it's like, well, then let's figure out how to help that person get better. And maybe this job is not something that they can handle at the moment.
Right. Well, so because the person who's saying, "Hey, what can we do to help you?" is seeing that person as a human being and as a friend, and you know, or a part of their family, and you want them to succeed, but you don't want to use them up and burn them out. Whereas the person who's just interested in the bottom line, it's like, if you can't keep up, then we'll find somebody else who can. And you know over 100 years ago, that's how unions started to come about, because
Mm-hmm.
big corporations just paid low wages and poor working conditions, and they had lots of people that they could substitute if you don't want it. So if you don't want it, here, there's somebody over there that's hungry. They'll take your job. And so then they were able to, you know, skim all the money for themselves and pay the working person just a little bit, trying to, the bare minimum. I mean, I don't know if you want to get off into that subject, but, Jeff Bezos, and Amazon, those people that work for Amazon work hard, and, they demand a lot from them. And $15 an hour is not really going to help a person to have a family, you know, uh, and and he certainly, he has enough money to, build spaceships and go for joy rides in outer space, and figure out how he can make money from other rich people who want to have the same experience. And that's all nice for him, but it's at the expense of a lot of other people. And this is the, trying to find that balance. Excuse me, the haves and the have-nots. Those people who don't want to share the pie.
Right. Right. No, and Monica said, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just bringing up an example of physical versus mental health situations in the workplace of today. John left. John called out. No, I'm just kidding.
Charging Charging.
He's charging. Yeah, and it's really, I think now that we're like talking about it and without starting a completely different podcast, it's almost like you said, going all the way back in time. If we see how far the workforce has come, there's unions, there's laws to protect people, FMLA, paternity leave, maternity leave is slowly but surely getting better in a lot of areas. And this is something I wanted to talk to my mom wanted to talk about tomorrow, where we're specifically talking about mental health and COVID. But I'll start the conversation with you here today. I posted on Facebook. Yes, everybody, if you're listening, I post on Facebook a lot. Get over it. I also said something to the extent like, mental health awareness, let's end the stigma until and it's Olympic athlete, right? Then we want to villainize, right? And I also said somewhere in there that this is just the beginning, because I think there needs to be some sort of movement in regards to mental health and the workplace. And my employers are probably like, well, listen, this we're going to fire this guy right now. But no, real quick, let me just say real quick that I am a firm believer that if you are in management, senior management, you're a director, you're a CEO, you're up there, you're on the board, right? It doesn't mean that you know the job better than the people who are working on the floor, because you don't. It evolves. You're not on there. You'll lose some stats, which is fine. That's what's going to happen. You have proven that you're able to strategize and can handle the 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 how fierce the job can be, right? You can handle everybody's issues. You can handle putting budgets together. You can handle doing the schedule. You can handle working 10 to 12 hours. You can handle working from home because that's what you need to do. You can handle it, right? Hope probably mentally, physically, you have the stamina to be able to do that. Most people just aren't like that, and that's fine, right? That's why there's only one CEO seat, one COO seat, one director, and then an assistant director, whatever, because not everybody can handle it, right? Anyway, I got off on a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to make that very clear. I'd like to see, and I think we're seeing the beginning stages of it, people just aren't going to jeopardize their mental health anymore, right? Somebody might be like, you know what? I am sick and tired of the way my boss treats me. I'm quitting right here, right now, today. And I can log on to DoorDash and start DoorDashing as soon as I get home. And I'll make my own schedule. And I won't take anything from anybody. And I'll work as much as I need to until I figure out what the next move is, right? People have that ability today. And my honest opinion is people are going to start doing what they want and need to do. If they don't like being somewhere, they're just going to leave. And you know, a lot of people will say, well, that's laziness. People don't like structure. People don't like discipline. You might absolutely be right. But also, people are just going to stop sacrificing their mental health. And I'm for that.
Well, it's fine for you to say I'm lazy when you're standing on my back and I am carrying you. You know, it's real easy to say that I'm being lazy because I won't carry you further.
Right.
You know, it's like me being, you know, in a rickshaw and saying, "Come on, faster, faster! I'm paying you. Run up that hill. I've got deadlines to meet. You know, get up there." You know, it's just real easy for us to want other people to do the work, you know, that makes our life easier. And it's unfortunate that people aren't willing to work together. You know,
What do you
it's
think? I mean, you deal with people, you work with people more than I do, like one on one, working through their issues. Do you feel like perhaps it's the beginning stages of people starting to put themselves first? Because, and my dad and I have had these conversations. Just real quick to give this example, I'll tell my dad about something that's going on or whatever, and he'll be like, well, you can't say that. You're going to get fired. And I'm like, well, I'm not just going to tell somebody off. I'm going to explain what I'm thinking. Right. And respectfully, he'll say that he comes from that age of you just keep your head down and you keep going. Right. You just keep working and working. But him and I, through conversations, he has, you know, gotten to the point where he says, you know, the workforce today better than I do. So I'm just going to take your word for it. But, and I know that your dad was probably the same, right? You just do it. It doesn't matter what's going on, what you're feeling. You just got to keep chugging through it. And I hope we're seeing a turning point in the workforce and in the work environment with that.
Well, my dad's generation is older than your dad, because my dad's generation eats kennel ration. No, it's an old commercial. My dog's better than your dog because my dog eats kennel ration. So,
Yeah.
but certainly my dad's generation was you do shut down to those feelings and you just do what you have to do. But it's been shown that that is not healthy on the emotional level for people to do that.
The physical level,
And
right?
well, it emotionally, and then it transfers to the physical. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all connected, and we become more aware of that. But there's still people, you said earlier about some people, well, I don't want to talk about it. Well, certainly a person has the right to choose not to talk about something, but not talking about something isn't what is going to help me to heal the emotional wound, unless I just do it for a short period of time so I can kind of gather myself and my thoughts. If we use that as I'll never talk about that again, that's not going to help me to heal that wound.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. We don't know how to deal with our hurts. We don't know how to address them and alleviate them. We ignore them, through distractions, where we do things to keep busy so I don't have to deal with that, or we numb out to it, or we resort to addictions, or we just turn it to anger and we're angry at others or ourselves or the property. But none of those things, distractions, addictions, numbing out, anger at others, yourself, none of that makes our pain go away, not even a little bit. So it doesn't heal it. It doesn't heal it. So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one thing that I've actually asked my dad about this. So my dad and your dad and the kennel ration generation, you just put your head down, you go, you do it. You go through with it. You keep your head down, you work, and you keep going, right? I didn't live through that time, but in all the TV shows and movies that I've watched, there is liquor in the offices. Dad has a drink when he gets home. Mom's having martinis, right? And I've actually asked my dad if my grandfather or his uncle or whomever kept alcohol in the office. And it's actually, I can't think about what his answer was right now, but I'm pretty sure he said in the beginning, right? And to me, everyone kept their head down and worked and worked and worked. But what you just said, they're coping, in my mind, they're coping in other ways throughout the day in the workplace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, keeping your head down is another way that we are attempting to cope. And,
I'm talking about the alcohol too.
right. Well, but, we use the alcohol to cope with keeping our head down sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I
So,
got you.
so you have a coping style to help a coping style because the coping styles really aren't working. We all want to make our lives, less fearful and have more love in it, but we don't always know how to do it. Years ago, when a person was sick, they wanted that person to be well. And so what did they do? They went to a doctor, and what did the doctor do? He put leeches on them and tried to draw their blood out because they thought that was going to make a person well. And it didn't. But they didn't know any difference. It took a lot of doing that before they saw this isn't working.
Right.
And there's a lot of things in society that we do that aren't working, but because the majority of the people are doing it, we think that's what you have to do, and we don't question it. And but I think what you're alluding to before is that younger people, as always, question things. Well, why do you do that? And sometimes people are just so used to doing it that they don't even realize that they're just doing it. There's an old story about how this woman was cooking a Christmas ham, and she cut the end off of it and put it in the pot and then put it in the oven. And her husband says, "Why did you do that?" And she looked and she didn't even realize what she'd done. She, well, my mom always did that. So that's what I do. So she said, let me call my mom. And so, Mom, when you cook the ham, why do you cut the end off? It's just what grandmom always did. You know, grandmom, they call grandmom. Grandmom, when you cook the ham and you cut the end, why do you cut the end off? Well, because I had a small pot and I couldn't fit the whole ham in it. And so I would cut the end off. Well, that thing that she did, way back, but it becomes a tradition, even though now you get a bigger pot and a bigger oven to put it in, but you just do what you've always done. And we do things without questioning a lot of times because it's a lot of energy to think about everything we do and the reason why we do it. But the young person hasn't been doing it all these years. And so they question it like, well, why? Why do I have to do that? And that's how change occurs, because you get, a new generation that says, no, that hasn't worked for us. I'm not going to continue to do that.
Then you see businesses are starting to adhere. They want to make employees happy. I know Google and I want to say Apple are big on. I know for a fact, as I'm listening to the book that the CEO of Netflix has written, Reed Hastings, they don't have a limit on their vacation time. They want people to be like, listen, I'm stepping away. I'm putting the laptop away. I need to regenerate, right? And he credits that to Netflix's success because he says that he's had people go on vacations 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? Now, mind you, they're probably very creative, imaginative people to begin with, right? So he uses one example. The guy goes on vacation for 3 weeks. He goes he rents a house or something in the woods, and he's walking around. And then he was inspired. And then he has an idea. He comes back refreshed. He puts the idea into play, right? And as we've seen, Netflix just continues to grow, do great things, be innovative, and I would say a big part of that is keeping their employees happy the best way they can, or
Yeah,
in many ways rather.
Yeah, well, when you take part of the profits and you put it back into the employees like that so that they can have an extra week or whatever, they can have those benefits, then the person is more productive because they're happier and healthier, as opposed to the person who has their nose to the grindstone and is tired and just does things and they get up and and everything is a drag and because it's not fun anymore. They don't make it fun, they make it work. And when you're in a creative environment, and that can be fun because you're coming up with ideas and there's, but when you're squeezing every cent you can out of the worker, then just so that somebody who invested in the company can live home not having to work because they're living off of their money and it's just making more money for them, that's what to me makes things not work. And it's, you can see throughout history, as it ebbs and flows to, who has the power, the people with wealth, or the person who's working hard, who's actually making that wealth available to the person who quote unquote owns the company.
Right.
So they get to take all the cream and half the milk off the top.
Right. And let's be fair to anybody who's listening before they, think to themselves, well, these guys know nothing about economics and businesses and this and that. John and I are very well aware that there's other industries where the margins are very thin. Netflix and Google and Apple, the margins are very different. You get into the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, it's very different. But I see plenty of articles now that restaurant workers are quitting, and this and that and the other thing. And I will say that I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that I have seen on many occasions. I've lived through it. They give back to the employees, right? I was able to step away on paternity leave for 10 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and get my full salary, right? I was able to be home and not worry about things. You accumulate vacation time in a very fair manner. You have sick days that are separate from that. You have the opportunity to apply for their positions in 6 months to a year and continue to grow, right? All these things that keep people motivated. But, and I was saying this about unemployment, and I have my own issues with where unemployment is at the moment because it is impeding on my industry, in particular, hospitality, whether that's Wawa or the restaurants, the hotels, or whatever. But not speaking bad about my company, and I'm sure you could attest to this because I know you've worked in restaurants as well. If somebody's sitting at home and they're collecting, yes, let's get this out of the way. They may be collecting because that's what they want to do. But I also think it's very important for people to realize that there are so many employers that do not treat their employees fair. So if you're somebody who's been there for 10 or 15 years and your response is, well, I can't beat the pay and the health benefits are great, but you hate your job and now you've been furloughed, okay, and you're collecting and you're making more than you did before, or you're just making enough money that you can live and be happy, why would I want to go back to a place that mistreats me? What do you think?
Well, you know, it's part of taking good care of ourselves. And if a workplace is mistreating people, the karma is going to come back to them eventually. And
One way or another.
And the restaurant industry has, for a long time, forced people to rely on tips, for waiters and waitresses, bartenders, bus boys and bus girls, and and they, and of course we want to go out to restaurants and we don't want to pay a higher price for that meal, and so it's one's trying to satisfy somebody else, and but it's ends up a lot of times being at the expense of someone or a group of people, that they're the ones that are expected to pay the lion's share of the cost, of doing business. And it's like taxes. There's so many corporations and people in the top 1% that don't pay any taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people making $10-15 an hour are paying a lot in taxes when you consider the percentage of their income that they're paying in taxes. And so it's a constant challenge, and all we can do is just try to be, as far as I'm concerned, just try to be as understanding of everyone. There are other people that think it's just to be the survival of the fittest. Too bad, I'm stepping on your head in order to get up there. You should have gotten here first, and then you can step on my head. So
no, definitely. So, all right. So, as we reach the end of this episode, what are your final thoughts, or what would you like to say to everyone who's listening now or will be listening on the podcast about mental health? Like the first thing that comes to mind and the advice that you would give. What do you think? Even if it's just the beginning phases.
I think that mental health needs to be addressed. We, as a society, don't look at it enough to help people to get through it. And my experience is that, a person who has a problem with mental health is often because of traumas that have happened in their life that they don't know how to heal or deal with on an emotional level. And then it can impact them on a physical level. And until we get better at teaching people how to be able to process through emotional pain and how to alleviate their hurts, then we're going to continue to have a lot of people who just try to hurt other people as a way of coping with their hurt, but it doesn't make their pain go away. And that's the sad thing, because they think the only reason it didn't is because I just didn't hurt enough. I just didn't get angry enough. And no, it's because you're not doing what you need to do for yourself as far as that respect, understanding, acceptance, caring, appreciation, and trust, the 6 ways that we give love to ourselves and love to others.
Excellent. Excellent. And on that note, John, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. It's great to have you back. I know people always enjoy our conversations and enjoy your input, so we look forward to having you back. Glad that everything is okay with the family. And why don't you drop your information for everybody who's listening, how they can get in touch with you?
Well, there's the website, which is supportivealliance.com, all one word, supportivealliance.com. And then there's contact at supportivealliance.com as far as the email address. And so that's how people can make contact.
Excellent. John, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Always love our conversations. Always love your input. And we will have you back very soon. To everybody who's watching or listening, we hope that you gain something from this. Continue to listen. We'll keep bringing you the best that we can. We'll keep giving you the input from our experts, John, my mother, and anybody else who decides to join us. We'll bring them all in. But thank you for listening. We'll see everybody next time. John, thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure to be back with you, Ryan. And until next time.
Until next time. Glad to have you back, John. We'll see everybody next time. Take